Today's video is sponsored by Black Gold Compost Company. I want to thank the good people over at Black Gold for the generous donation of all this beautiful black cow manure that we use in our video today, and it's made a tremendous success in our garden. I've been using black cow for many years, ever since 1980, and it's always made a tremendous difference in my garden, and I've been very pleased with our product. I highly recommend it. Thank you, Black Gold, for sponsoring our channel. Well, happy new day, Homestead family. Today we're going to do a video on growing squash. We're going to grow it together. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, friends. You know, if this is your first time growing squash, and our channel is really dialed in on trying to help the beginner gardener, first time gardener, and as well as the seasoned master gardeners as well. But our real goal is to help folks get started, and I like to do it in a way that keeps it nice and simple, and so that don't scare you to death, because really it's nothing to it and anyone can do it. And I want you to enjoy the joy and the peace that you're going to find in your own garden, in your backyard, not to mention the health benefits and the fantastic tasting vegetables. So today, if you've never grown squash before, I'm going to go through the basics, and we're going to grow just a typical summer squash, and we're going to grow it together. And I started these from seed, and they've been out here on the hardening table for a couple days now, 2 or 3 days, and they've already got a good true leaf on them. These codling leaves, they've been living off the codling leaves when they emerge, but once I see the true leaves come up, they are ready to go to the ground. They're ready to start gobbling up some of that good old photosynthesis. So today, let's get these in the ground. We're going to plant them over in the earth bed directly into the ground, transplant them into the ground. And I wanted to go through some basics with you so that you would know what to look for before you get started in your squash garden this year. So let's take a look at a little diagram I drew up. I thought that might make it easier. It always helped me when I was younger, if I could see something in a picture. So pictures help me. I hope to help you. So let's check it out. All right, let's take a look at some pictures together. The first thing I want to talk about is, when to sow your seeds. You want to start your squash seeds after all danger of frost has passed. These are warm temperature plants. They grow in the summer really good, and they really do not like cold temperatures. If you was to get them out there and get them going, and you get a surprise frost on them, you're gonna probably lose your squash. So don't risk it. Wait until that frost is completely gone. And you can direct sow, or you can start squash from seed. I got my seeds here. I got them from johnnyseed.com, and that's a good place to get seeds. And today we're gonna be transplanting. I prefer to transplant my seeds for squash instead of trying to direct sow. I seem to have a whole lot better success when I start them into seed trays and transplant them, and I can get the fertilizer down there the way I want to do it, and it just seems to work better for me. Now, speaking of fertilizer, I don't know if any of y'all have seen a lot of my videos, but you'll see that I use fish for a fertilizer, and I've used it for decades and decades and decades with much success. I really like using the organic fish. It decomposes really quick, and gives a really good organic boost of fertilizer that usually lasts the entire cycle of my plant. Rarely do I have to come back and side dress anything that I'm using my fish in. Now, if you can't get a hold of fish, if you don't go fishing like we do, me and Nancy have tons of fish heads out there in a freezer that we save all winter, saving them up for spring. But you could also go to a fresh fish market if you have one in your area, and they'll give you the heads and guts if you just ask them for them. And man, that's free fertilizer, so take advantage of that. And if you don't have one of them, if you have like a bait store near you somewhere, especially a saltwater bait store, you know, folks that live on the ocean coast, they always have frozen bait fish that you can buy real cheap, and it's a terrific fertilizer. Now, if you don't have either one, that's okay too. What I do is I'll put in 4 tablespoons of bone meal, because I want to really push the phosphorus to get that root growth and the blooms on these plants, and 2 tablespoons of blood meal. That'll help with the leaf, growing the leaves. And I'll always add some garden lime, which ain't nothing but pulverized dolomitic limestone, and that's to reduce that blossom end rot. Now, if you've never grown squash before, one of the common problems that a lot of folks experience growing squash is you get that blossom end rot on them. Same thing with tomatoes. It looks the same. The end of the fruit will start to die back and just all of a sudden rot from the end of the fruit back, and it's very disappointing. And it's much easier to prevent blossom end rot rather than trying to you know, cure it after it gets started. And here's some of the 2 things I can tell you to do, and I'm going to do it today. One reason that these blossom end rot gets going is, first of all, you got way too much fertilizer, which causes the leaves to grow a lot faster than the roots. And if the plant's roots can't take up that calcium fast enough, and the end of the root, the end of the fruit will suffer and it'll rot. So, you know, you don't want to boost the nitrogen on these plants. What you really want to boost is the phosphorus, which will boost the roots, the root system, and it gets the plenty of blooms as the plant matures as well. So the nitrogen is something that you want to be real careful with. That's why up here I put 4 tablespoons of blood meal to 4 tablespoons of bone meal to 2 tablespoons of blood meal. I got twice as much phosphorus as I do nitrogen, and that's the reason, because I don't want too much nitrogen on there. The second thing that causes this blossom end rot is basically it's a calcium deficiency. Especially in my soil. I have sandy soil down here in Florida, and it's terrible. And I know it's calcium deficient, so by adding the lime into the hole when I'm planting it, that will greatly reduce that blossom end rot. And in my case, what I've always found is when I add 4 or 5 tablespoons of the calcium, you know, the dolomitic limestone, garden lime, when I add that into the hole, I don't even get blossom end rot. So it helps, and I highly recommend adding in the garden lime, okay? And you can get that garden lime at Lowe's. I go up there and get a big old 40-pound bag, and it lasts me a whole year, sometimes 2 years. So, you know, it's not expensive, you know, less than right around about $10 last time I bought some. But anyway, you won't have that lime on hand. Now, another reason that I put the lime in the hole is when I'm using fish, I put that lime right on top of that fish, because I want to mask the smell of that fish decomposing, because if an animal smells that, he's going to come over and dig it up, trying to get to that fish, and he's going to end up digging up your plant. So always put the lime in there if you have fish for a fertilizer, and if you don't, still put the lime in there because you need it for the calcium deficiency. Okay, so our squash is going to prefer well-drained soil with a pH of about 5.8 to 6.8. That's standard for a vegetable. You know, I try to hit 6.0, 6.5 for all my vegetables, and that seems to be the sweet spot. And you can expect these things to harvest the first harvest in about 60 days, and you will get multiple harvests. I get at least 2 or 3 harvests off of every plant if I can get my plants to live that long. Okay, Now here's a little picture I wanted to show you. I hope you can see this okay. This is how I plant my squash out in the earth bed. When I get me an area that I'm going to plant my squash in, I want to give them 5 to 6 feet in between rows. And the reason for that is these squash plants, these summer squash, they're not trellis type plants. They're not going to grow on a trellis. These are bush plants that are going to spread out on the ground, and they get real big. They get my plants will get 6, 7 feet in diameter. So that's why I put 5 to 6 feet in between my row spacing, each row. And now the spacing on the row is I go 5 to 6 feet center to center. And I also stagger my plants row to row. So if I'll start off 3 feet on this row, then I'll start this row off 6 feet. So it comes in like this, see? It's a staggered pattern all the way through the garden. That way these plants aren't sitting right next to each other and running into each other. This becomes just a solid mass of plant material. So staggering your plant material on those staggered centers like that helps it to grow healthy and not getting all jumbled up with each other. So this is how we're going to plant it today. I've only got about 3 rows to do. So let's head over to the earth garden, and let's take a look at what we're going to do over there and how to get that done. I'll meet you over there. Okay, we're over here at the earth bed. This is the area that I'm going to dedicate to summer squash this year. If you look at the bed, you can see where I have already amended this soil with about 4 to 6 inches of black cow manure. I put it on there, it's been about 2.5 weeks now. And now I'm going to cultivate that and incorporate that that animal compost. I'm going to incorporate that into my soil. Remember when we moved here, this soil was really bad, and I've been working on it. This is my 3rd year, and I'm still working on this soil. So it's not really quite right yet, but it's getting there thanks to the black cow. So I'm going to get this all cultivated in. Then I'm going to string up my line, my guideline, and I'm going to mark out my holes, my spacing, and then I'm going to put the fish in the hole, and the ingredients, the amendment, bone meal and blood meal and lime, and we cover it up and we put the plant in, stall it on the 5 to 6 foot centers. So let's get started on getting this show on the road. Okay, I got this first section cultivated, and then I graded it out with my grading rake to kind of smooth it out, because I wanted to get any little low spots out of here that I could, because that just stands in water and usually causes a rot problem to any vegetables that I have in my garden. So anyway, I do 1 row at a time, and I'm right here. Here's my guide string. So I'm going to start my first row off 6 feet. I'm 6 feet from the edge, right? I dig my hole for my fish. Move down another 6 feet, dig the next one. And I try to get my holes right at about 6 inches deep. Okay, let me get the rest of these holes in. We'll take it to the next step. Well, here's a bag full of my favorite fishing, crappie fishing, and we save the heads. When me and Nancy go fishing, we clean the fish, we save the heads, and we save the guts for a day like this. So what I do in this hole, I put at least 1 fish head in there. And if you have a little bitty one, you can put 2 in each hole. Okay, cover that fish completely. Okay, the next step is I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of the blood meal. Then I'm gonna put 4 tablespoons of the bone meal. Remember, we talked about that earlier. 3, 4, okay? Then I take the dirt that I dug out of the hole and I cover the hole back up, see? There she is. All the good stuff's right down in the bottom where those roots are gonna dig down to them. Once I have my spot located from my string, I push down in a hole from the tip of my middle finger to the middle of my palm. I put 1 more tablespoon of blood meal and 2 more tablespoons of bone meal. Then I pull out a seedling. And this is the seedling. These are the 2 codlin leaves. These are the leaves that this plant survived, this seedling survived off of these codlin leaves until it started to produce the true leaf. And once it got the true leaf, these codlin leaves will eventually turn yellow and die and fall off, because now they're living off of photosynthesis and what the root system can give them. So we put that in, right on down in there. Pack it in enough to where you mash the air out of it, okay? And when we water this in, it'll set down some more. So that's how you get them into the ground. Let me get the rest of these plants installed, and then we'll take a look at the squash plot and take a look at where we're at. Okay, we got my 3 rows of squash installed. 1, 2, and 3 rows, and right when you first put it in and it's spaced out the way it is, you look like, wow, what a waste of space. And I'm sure some of my critics will have a whole lot to say about that spacing, but that's okay. You say what you got to say. I'm going to keep doing things the way I do it. And the way I do it is I give my plants plenty of room to cascade out and develop into full maturity. I leave plenty of room between my plants for ventilation. These squash are prone to white powdery mildew, so the more air I can get to move through there, the better. Now, on the watering, I'm watering right now to get them soaked in. When you water your squash, only water in the very early morning. That's it. Don't ever water them in the afternoon. Water in the early morning so they have the whole day to dry out and all that water to evaporate and just soak in real good. Because if they stay wet for any period of time overnight, they're going to develop that white powdery mildew. And we'll go into some of the care of that as these plants mature. So don't click off the video. We're going to keep going on this video all the way till we harvest it. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks and we'll check on the progress of this stand of squash. Well, good morning, friends. It's been 4 weeks since we planted these squash from seed. They've been out here in the earth bed and they're doing really pretty good. I'm already starting to get some male and female blooms. Remember, you get the male and the female on the same plant, which is pretty cool. And remember, when you first start seeing your blossoms appear on your squash plant, it's not unusual to get a whole bunch of male flowers at first. And don't be alarmed. There's really nothing you need to do about that. Other than just be patient. It takes them a while to get into their rhythm and get to producing the females along with it, because the female bloom is the one that's going to produce the fruit. You can always tell it's female because it's got a little baby fruit right behind the flower, and the male just has a long stem with the flower, okay? So take a little close-up look at one of these plants here. You can see the plant looks very healthy and it's very vigorous. There's nothing I need to do other than watch out for any diseases that may pop up. And we'll be watching the progress of these in the days ahead, because it really is not going to be very much longer and we're going to get our first harvest. So remember, we get multiple harvests out of these squash plants. So we're looking forward to the days ahead when they start to really produce. So we'll see you back here in a few more weeks. Well, our squash plants have been growing for 37 days. We planted them from seed 37 days ago and planted them out here in the earth garden, and they're really starting to do something. We've actually had a couple of rogue cold fronts and 11 days of solid rain, but they've managed to come through it with no real problems, and they're really producing a lot of fruit right now. As you can see, every plant's just loaded, and they're doing well. They're cascading out. If you'll remember, we put these in 5 to 6 feet apart, and it seemed like excessive spacing for the plants, but if you look at them, you can see that these things have cascaded out, and they're still not touching each other. There's still about a foot in between each one, which is what I'm looking for, because I don't want my leaves to lay on top of each other like that, which creates all kinds of mildew problems. So I want that ventilation and that airflow to get through these plants as much as possible. So that 6 foot frames, that 6 foot spacing on the row really does that, and I've got them 3 feet apart on the row. So each row's 3 feet apart, and they're 6 feet apart on the row, and it's working. So we're looking forward to getting a good harvest on here. It looks like they'll be ready to harvest in the next probably in the next 4 or 5 days. So we'll be coming out here and getting a bucket full of squash, draw up some onions, and get us some good old sauteed squash and onions. So we'll be back in a few more days, and we'll get us a little bit of something to eat. We'll see you then. Well, good morning, friends. It's been 43 days since we started our squash from seed, and today we're doing our first harvest. And the first harvest is usually really just getting started, and you'll get plenty of these squash. Actually, I get more of these squash on the second harvest, but as you can see, that ain't really that bad of a squash. That one to me is a little bit too big. I like them to be about a little bit smaller than that, be more tender, but they're still pretty good. We're just picking some today so that we can go in the house tonight and saute some squash with some onions. We just harvested a whole row of onions yesterday, so we got some brand new, nice and wet, sweet onions to harvest with them. But this will give us plenty for us and her mother and our, our friends and neighbors. And probably in about a week, these things are so heavily laden with the new fruit. A week from now, we'd be able to get, I would say, about 3 bushels, at least 3 bushels of squash off of these 3 rows in a week from now. And at that point, we'll be able to go down to the local soup kitchen. Nancy's friends with all them guys down there. She volunteers down there sometimes to help out, and then we'll donate all that squash to the soup kitchen to help, feed some folks that just need a hand up. So let me finish getting up some of the squash, and we'll go over to the harvest area and take a look at it.
Yeah, they're beautiful, hon.
Well, this is just the first day, first harvest, so we got enough for the first harvest. Let's head over to the harvest area and clean these up a little bit. That's plenty enough for us, her mama, and our neighbor. So let's go check it out. Well, good morning, Homestead family. It's been about 3 weeks since we first started the harvest, our first little harvest. We had about a half a bushel or so. So in the last 3 weeks, that harvest has steadily increased every week, for the last 3 weeks. Today is 65 days since we started these squash from seed. So as you can tell, the squash patch is loaded, is full, and as you can see that it pays off with the 5 to 6 foot spacing on the plants on the row, because these plants at full maturity have cascaded out, and they're actually starting to touch each other where it's just solid squash. And if I'd have had these in any tighter than that, then these plants would have been tangled up with each other and become leggy and less productive. So this spacing that we just started out with might have looked kind of skimpy at first, but it ain't no more. But anyway, today we're going to get a pretty big harvest. This is one that we're going to give to the soup kitchen to help the people that need some food and have some fun harvesting. So let's get started. Wow, what a beautiful harvest.
It is. It's massive. It's just massive.
Yeah, I would say that's called massive. Anyway, you said you wanted some squash, so you're welcome. Well, today the Lord has blessed us again for the third week in a row with a table full of this beautiful squash, and we're eating squash and putting up squash and sharing squash, and everybody wins. Everybody gets some squash. So we hope that you learned a little bit on this little journey on how to grow squash. There's really nothing to it, and it's a very enjoyable vegetable, very favorite, one of the favorites of the spring garden. So if you've never grown it before, give it a shot. I'm sure you can do it. There's nothing to it. You may not want this much, but you know.
Maybe two plants.
Yeah,
in a home garden.
Two or three plants is probably plenty for a family of four. We just grow extra because we share it with a lot of folks, and the soup kitchen. We're going to take this up to the soup kitchen in a few minutes and share it with them, and they feed a lot of folks in the area that are down and out and just need a hand up, and we're blessed to be able to bless them. So the blessings in the giving, not receiving, right? So anyway, we hope our videos have brought some peace to your day, some joy to your heart. Until me and Nancy see you next time, always remember, by His hands we are fed. Give us, Lord, our daily bread. Amen.
Have a blessed day. Wow. They're going to love it at the soup kitchen.
Yeah.
Yep, it's going to be a lot.